What's going on, everybody? Thanks for checking in. I am Derrick, also known as Theo, CEO of Sky Acquisitions, a proud service-disabled, veteran-owned firm where we specialize in federal contracting as well as hosting initiatives to help house homeless vets. Stick around to the end of the video and we'll give you more gems on that, all right? But for now, we need to segue right into a very uncomfortable conversation to talk about why you are not winning in the federal contracting space, okay? And fear not, I made some notes so that we can stay on topic because there's some very important points that I do not want to skip over as I continue to read and then elaborate a little bit. Good thing is, you're in luck because you are getting this information directly from a former federal contracting officer. Of course, if you know anything about me, you know that I was the man who actually signed off on a lot of the companies and chose who actually gets the contracts. If you don't understand what a federal contracting or procurement officer is, we are basically the people who set the evaluation criteria by which contracts are awarded, set the competitive range, which ultimately decides who gets awarded contracts and who gets their dear loser letters, right? All right, so that's funny, but it's not, all right? All right, but look, so we want to go ahead and get into this so that you can understand why many of you are not winning, all right? So look, let's dive right into this. Most small businesses don't fail at federal contracting because they weren't qualified. They fail because they treat this like a hustle, not a profession. Look, I can vouch for that here in the Houston area. I don't know how many people come to me and say, hey, Theo, hey man, y'all do that government contracting stuff, right? I say, yeah, well, tell me about your business. What does your business do? Yeah, well, we do a little bit of this, we do that, and if we can't get this, we can call somebody to do that. And I say, stop, man, you're killing me, Smalls. Look, man, what does your company do? When you start hopping around, saying we can do this, and that, you are already signaling to the government that you are a hustler and not a problem solver. The government does not want hustlers. They want problem solvers. They have problems, hence why they need to contract certain functions out because they can't get certain things done within the parameters of their employee workforce. So they rely on companies like you, those of you who are competent, who actually have a mission-driven workforce. All right, let's move on. Capability statements, NAICS codes, and past performance. That's all it takes, right? Wrong. Those are simply checkbox items. It does not make you special that you have a capability statement or a NAICS code or a statement of past performance. Everyone has that. What wins contracts? Leadership, team, vision, your ability to inspire your workforce and keep them loyal to the mission. How would you communicate that in your proposal so that you stand out from other companies? We're going to break that down piece by piece so that if you were a contracting officer, you can ask yourself, would you hire you to operate a multi-million-dollar operation under federal scrutiny? All right, so let's talk about the mindset myth, right? Now look at this. Everybody wants to win government money, but nobody wants to understand the government mindset. They choose the bag instead of the process. They copy other capability statements, but never ask what makes theirs trustworthy. Look, do you understand? The government knows if you've put any effort into whether or not you've put effort into your capability statements, or you just took a template and just basically put your logo on there and all of the other stuff that they expect you to have on there. No effort. You'd be surprised how many people who are actually qualified but gets thrown to the bottom of the stack Because once again, you're treating this like a hustle. You think that this is something that you can just take from somebody else, wash, rinse, and repeat. Wash, rinse, and repeat. This is not flipping houses. It's not a hustle. This is you have to be of the mindset of generational wealth. You have to think about long-term wealth, building an actual empire. Hustling and empire building, they're not the same thing. You have to actually understand leadership. You have to understand workforce development. You have to understand flow charts, org charts, and how do you communicate your understanding of that to the federal government in a way that they would want to contract with you, because you stand out from the other thousands of people who's trying to convince them the same thing, right? So anyway, let's keep going. The truth is, the government awards contracts to people who they trust to lead teams, solve real world problems, and follow through. So ask yourself, once again, would you hire you to run a multi-million dollar operation under government scrutiny? Think about that for a second. But let's back up a little bit. The government awards contracts to people they trust to lead teams, solve real world problems. So here's my question. Are you a problem solver? Are you ready to provide a lot of value for a lot of people? Your capability statement, your bid, your past performance has to have an element of character in there, integrity that shows that you are actually about helping them solve a problem. Because the reason they're trying to contract with companies is because they're trying to solve problems. They got problems that can't be solved by their employees, internally from within their workforce. So they are looking for you to help them find those answers. And if you come at them looking like another hustler who's just throwing together a packet that had no effort, looks like you just took somebody else's stuff and penciled your name in on it, they pick up on it immediately. How do I know this? Because I was they. I was a decision maker. I still have a lot of friends on the inside of these agencies doing the same thing. So keep that in mind as we go through these points. Now, would you hire you to run a multi-million dollar operation under federal scrutiny? And if the answer is not a hard yes, that's your first red flag right there. That means you need to do some digging. So how would you translate all of these things? How would you communicate value? How would you communicate a value proposition to the government, right? Well, that's what we do. That's what we help people do, so that you can do it in a way that communicates competence and longevity. All right, let's go. Moving on. Capability statements. Capability statements do not equal capability. Let's talk about that for a second. Let's get to my notes. Too many businesses think a clean capability statement makes them contract ready. Ooh, we just talked about that, right? But the government does not just want your bullet points, they actually want your blueprint. Once again, those are one of the things that help you stand out, and we can help you put that together. What's your plan when your supervisor quits mid-project? Look, okay, so as a former executive in the federal government who actually signed off on contracts, let's ask that question again. What's your plan when your supervisor quits in the middle of a project, in the middle of a contract is what they're asking, right? What kind of measurables, what measures do you have in place for workforce retention? What are your methods? What is your strategy to be able to manage your workforce during times of low morale? Or have you even thought about it? Once again, if I'm hiring your company for a $20 million job, and that is very probable in the federal government, by the way, I'm sorry, but if you have not even thought about your parameters, your controls, your quality control measures that you have put in place for workforce retention. I cannot hire you for a multi-million-dollar job that is under federal scrutiny, okay? So think about that. And if you don't know how to think about, that's what we're here to do, to help guide you with those things, right? Let's talk about something else. What is your leadership approach when morale drops after a 30-day payment delay? Ooh, that's good. How do you keep people inspired to work when morale is low and resources are low? Have you thought about that? Have you thought that far? Your proposal should speak to your workforce retention, your chain of command stability, and how you lead in times of pressure, heavy suspenses. That's what makes you real, not just past performance, but future predictability. All right? So ask yourself again, how would you communicate that in your proposal so that you can stand out? Would you hire you to manage a multi-million-dollar operation under federal scrutiny? Let's move on. Contract types that matter right now in mid-2025. What are contract types that matter right now? Let's talk about it a little bit. Okay, so let's break this down. Logistics and transport, excuse me, supporting FEMA, Department of Homeland Security, Department of Defense missions, IT and cybersecurity, zero trust, cloud migration, AI integration, commercial real estate. Agencies are locating like crazy right now, and they are expanding and leasing spaces for long-term contracts. Once again, if you followed me for some time, we already know that when a government leases a space, they typically like to stay in place for up to 20 to 28 years. Imagine that. Imagine you own some commercial real estate or you have access to it, and you don't have to think about a commercial tenant for up to 20 to 28 years. All right, moving on. So just so you understand, this isn't theory. This is like active right now. Not to mention all of the other things. Medical, that's always going to be high with federal contracting. We don't have to talk about medical, engineering, and all the other parameters out there, right? All right, let's keep it moving. So, when you are targeting an opportunity in one of those industries, don't just state your capabilities. Show how your leadership, staffing, and oversight will make sure the government has no concerns about your ability to answer incidentals, and they do not need to micromanage you. How do you communicate that on paper when submitting your bid proposals? That's what we're here for. Now think about this, all right? So when you're looking at all this stuff, right? Leadership, staffing, oversight. How many companies have you worked for that does not already have all of that stuff in place? What makes you think the government wants anything less? All right? So once again, we're going to ask this question again. How would you communicate that in your proposal so that you can stand out from other companies? And would you hire you to manage a $1 million operation under federal scrutiny? Let's move on. All right, so this is a very special component because this talks about my fellow veterans, which many of them are dealing with homelessness and transitional issues, all right? So, in the last segment, we talked about commercial real estate being one of those aspects of federal contracting. Well, guess what? Within those parameters of commercial real estate is also housing homeless vets. Okay? Especially if you are looking to do it at a very high level, you have investment power or some sort of ties to an asset which can be used to help house homeless vets. Look, there are so many different angles to do this with, but for example, we actually have a model. Okay, we have a model. We have procurement pathways and strategies in which you can not only house homeless vets, but you can actually take that model and go ahead and contract your entire facility or your entire project with the government. and they pay you one of those 15, 20 to 28 year leases that we talked about. So there's so many different directions you can go. But going back to let's tie this into the earlier part of the conversation, right? What is your workforce development plan? Are you mission driven or just asset driven? Because I'm gonna tell you right now, if you are one of those people who's you just want to throw money at an asset and think that it's going to scale on its own, that does not work with the government. You have to understand that, yeah, it's good to be somebody who invests based on assets, right? But any smart businessman, any smart leader understands you have to be able to put people in place who understand, or you have to be able to put leaders in place who understands how to retain talent around that asset so that it can scale and thrive properly. All right? So we don't need to spend all day talking about numbers. Okay, well, how much can I get if I get, for example, if we take an apartment community and convert that into retrofit that to house homeless vets versus a traditional real estate asset. If you are thinking along those lines, it's probably not for you, right? But you can look this up. SSVF, Supportive Services for Veterans and Families, right? Whenever you house homeless vets, you are considered a SSVF designated or supportive community, right? Well, all of the statistics and data shows how a SSVF community that supports homeless veterans and troops is going to always outperform your traditional real estate asset anyway, because you're dealing with all kinds of programs that's going to not only get the rent from the individuals or from the government, but additional grants that comes in as a result of you catering to very important programs. All right? I could give you details on that, but that's a little too deep without a consultancy. All right, let's move on to the next. All right, so here's the bottom line, and I want to go ahead and defer to my notes on this because I don't want to leave out important stuff. So, most small businesses don't lose because they lack certifications. They lose because they can't lead a team, retain a workforce, and communicate that value beyond bullet points, okay? So you have to understand this is federal infrastructure. And your company, in a sense, needs to be able to mirror a governmental style framework. That's what people like us are here for, to help you do that. All right, so if you're serious about winning, your proposal should reflect more than past wins. It should reflect your ability to lead a mission. It should show that you are mission driven. You are venture driven and not just another hustler, because the government can pick up on that. They pick up on that really faster than ever now, because people have taken this government contracting thing. Y'all see the content creators out there, and they have turned this into another money grab, which is why the bar is being set higher, because the government, they're not interested and getting caught up in all of these hustles that are going on out there. They're trying to solve real world problems. And if you want to separate yourself from the noise and stand out from all of the dreamers who will probably never get any contracts, just saying, from the perspective of a contracting officer, you need to be able to show that you are mission driven and that you have the competence to retain a workforce and mirror a governmental style framework. All right, so that's what we're here for. Let's move on. Very important bonus: subcontracting and subcontracting limitations. So look, there is a popular video going around telling people that they can get rich just being the middleman in government contracts. Oh my goodness, that is called a pass-through, and it will land you in federal prison. That's why you cannot listen to these random content creators who have not actually done the job, like a lot of us former contracting officers and procurement officials, right? Or procurement executives, or federal acquisitions, procurement, potato. Look, There is in the Federal Acquisition Regulation, known as the FAR, there's something called the Notice of Limitations on Subcontracting. All right? There's a certain way that this has to be done if more than one company is going to work on a contract. You see this everywhere. There has to be 50%, the 50% rule. All right? The prime contractor has to actually be doing 50% of the work. Now, if you want to learn and better understand one of those unique setups, to where maybe you can function as an MSO, management servicing organization, or a project management firm. Okay, we got you. We can talk more about that. Just reach out. But in terms of this thing where you get a contract and sub it out, get a contract and sub it out, you're about to sub a whole lot of people right in jail. So look, if this hits home with you, follow GovConEmpire. That's GovConEmpire. GovConEmpire with Derrick Green on YouTube, GovConEmpire on TikTok, also LinkedIn. Derrick E. Green, CPPO. Once again, I'm Derrick Green, also known as Theo. I can be reached on those platforms. We are, once again, Sky Acquisitions, Sky Project Management, a proud SDVOSB, that is a service-disabled veteran-owned small business, as well as a former federal contracting officer and procurement executive. We can give you all the tools and the gems that you need from the insider perspective, which you will not get from most of the trendy content creators who have not actually did the job. All right, let's talk soon.